Unexpected coaching changes aren't new in the NBA, but today the Memphis Grizzlies decided to fire their head coach Taylor Jenkins after 6 seasons with the team. We're gonna talk about it all and more right after this.
Welcome to the number one place for your daily basketball news and analysis, NBA Central.
What's going on, basketball fans? Welcome to another episode of NBA Central, your number one spot for everything basketball related. I'm the host there, Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at NBA Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go and get into this content today, y'all. And Taylor Jenkins was fired today. Apparently, the Memphis Grizzlies called him up to fire him in person, so they did give him that respect. But Taylor Jenkins, a coach that's been with the Memphis Grizzlies now, this was his sixth season, has a well over 500 win percentage with that franchise. And the Memphis Grizzlies, while having disappointments at times this season, have been a team that their place in the standings isn't terrible, right? But this is amongst a offseason change. If you go back to this offseason, the Memphis Grizzlies brought in a lot of new assistant coaches that reportedly had taken over a lot. Taylor Jenkins had been more of a manager there, whereas a lot of the assistant coaches that were brought in that weren't necessarily his moves have kind of moved up in their decisions and things that they're making around the team with that. But, at this timing of this firing is a little bit surprising as well, considering we're 9 games left into the season for most teams. The Memphis Grizzlies six with a 60% win percentage on the season so far at 44-29. And while things haven't been all sunshine and rainbows, Taylor Jenkins is a really good X's and O's coach. And the Memphis Grizzlies were a team that I, for one, had said that weren't completely out of it as far as maybe making some noise in the playoffs. Didn't necessarily have them go into a Western Conference Finals or anything, but this was a team that, like I said, it's not like they were playing terribly. It's not like there was any reported discontent, but when you add in the kind of the thing that we saw on the sideline with Desmond Bane and Santami Adama and those guys, like, was that kind of a sign of some other things going on there, right? But it seems like some within that Memphis Grizzlies organization had questioned exactly what is Taylor Jenkins doing, and so it seems like there's going to be now a pivot from that and moving on. But when you look on the season, the Memphis Grizzlies have the 4th best net rating in the entirety of the NBA, the 6th best offensive rating, the 11th best defensive rating, right? This is a team that, again, it's not like they're playing, they're slouches out there, right? This late, going into the playoffs, to fire your head coach is crazy. Now, I'm all for, you got to make the best decision for your franchise. You got to do whatever you feel is best. But instilling, unless you have somebody that's on the back end of that bench that you see or could want to take a look at, and maybe it being an on-the-fly interview to be your next permanent head coach, this is a decision that maybe could have waited until you got into the offseason. So there's that questions there. But, of course, when you have moves and things that happen like this, it brings about questions of all right, what's going on internally in that franchise to where they felt like this was the right time to where this move had to be made? That's the question that you have to ask there. And, it's one that we'll see what happens, man. Overall, again, the Memphis Grizzlies have a lot of talent on that team. This is a team that, like I said, has talent, that has performed, well at times, but some could look at it and say maybe there's some disappointment there. And sometimes with teams that keep getting to the hump, right, sometimes you do need to make a move to get you over the hump. And maybe they view this as time to move on from the coach, and we'll see what happens there. Is this the right decision for them long term? That remains to be seen. Taylor Jenkins, from everything that you see, a really good X's and O's coach. He's really good. He's helped kind of lay out the groundwork of what that Memphis Grizzlies team has. When you look at the personalities that he's had to deal with over that time, but then you look at the success rate or lack thereof success in the playoffs. You look at it. His first year in 1920, they won 34 games. They missed the playoffs. In 2021, they had 38 wins. They made the playoffs. They were second in their division. They lost in the first round. In the 21-22 season, they won 56 games, and they lost in the conference semifinals. Then last year, despite all the injuries and things that was going on with that team, they don't have the best win-loss record at 27 last year. They missed the playoffs. But this is a team that's on pace to win 50 games this year. And so, Taylor Jenkins isn't going to have a problem finding another job in the NBA. That's not something that I expect it to be a problem or a struggle for Taylor Jenkins going forward, but it still just brings about those questions. How bad were things internally in that Memphis organization? Or, like I said earlier, that the fact that this franchise brought in a lot of assistants um that weren't necessarily Taylor Jenkins hires, was that kind of the first sign of we're going to start getting some of our guys in place here. If Taylor exceeds, great. If he doesn't, cool. We start having a succession plan or a direction that we want to go after this. And that's the franchise's right to do that. Seems like they did it the proper way. If you're going to fire somebody, by bringing him in, sitting him down face to face, and it being known that this is what they were going to do. They wanted to go a different direction. They wanted to move on. Still weird timing. We'll see how this affects the Grizzlies in the playoffs. But hey, it is what it is. This is still a shock, though. This is still a shock. You look at how he's gotten those guys to play, especially when they're all healthy and together. And yeah, I guess we'll just continue to watch how that goes. Like this team has weathered several storms when you really look at it, and that's to me is a sign of a good head coach that's able to keep it together, right? That's able to keep their team at least on the court together when you're able to weather that storm. But if he did lose the locker room or something, Rob says lost locker room, maybe that player argument could definitely be a sign of that. This decision so late into the season could hurt the Memphis Grizzlies, but we'll see how the rest of the season plays out. I mean, they don't have a lot of games left in the season, but we'll see what this means for the playoffs for this Memphis Grizzlies team. What kind of shit is this? It's close to the playoffs. Firing Taylor Jenkins, what the fuck? Yeah, I mean, like I said, I don't want to assume, right? Everything that I'm talking about, I do want to go off what we know, right? What we know, just the facts of what we know. Bunch of assistants have come in over the last year that weren't Taylor Jenkins hires, right? They're disappointing play. Like the Memphis Grizzlies have a 60% win percentage, but there's still a lot of people that's disappointed by where their season is, right? And I mean, they haven't had success in the playoffs. They haven't. So because of that, maybe those are the things that you're looking at it for. Why he has an over as a almost 50% win percentage in the regular season, his playoff win percentage is 38%. So maybe there's that aspect of it that they're looking at as well when kind of factoring into this decision. Like you said, this could have waited until the end of the season. Now that, Trav, I completely agree with. This is one of those decisions that you look at and you're like, was it needed right now? Right now, was that needed? But maybe that argument with Desmond Bane and Aldama was maybe a sign of something, some other bigger things going on in the background that we just don't see and we're not privy to. Shay says, honestly, I'll be holding on to Taylor Jenkins, especially with how he's developed the team from going to the grit and grind area to developing young talent. Listen, I have nothing bad to say about Taylor Jenkins. And that's why I think like Taylor is going to find a job. If Taylor wants a job this offseason, he's going to find a job this offseason. He'll probably be one of the top candidates for any jobs that come available. Him and Chris Quinn, I think, are guys that are going to be kind of towards the top of interviewees for first-time head coaches on new teams. So, Taylor isn't a first-time head coach, but Chris Quinn is going to be one of those guys that's first-time head coach. He's going to be on a lot of interviews, but Taylor Jenkins is going to have another job if he wants one. Interesting move this late in the season. Taylor like deep dish and hot dogs. Cubs fan, maybe. The Windy City is a nice place. We've already, I don't know if the Bulls are going to be moving on from Billy Donovan. Should they? Yes. Taylor Jenkins, absolutely. What's the latest firing for a playoff team? I don't know, bro. That's one of those trivia questions that I don't know off the top of my head. I don't know if you've heard, but I hear a lot of organizations are starting to take their teams back and they're tired of this players league. Yeah, I mean, yes. And I think that you're seeing that in deals and even how the trade deadline was manufactured. I think you're seeing a lot of that. There are going to be teams that are going to like ownerships and groups and things that are going to be fighting against the player empowerment movement. But I don't know if that's necessarily this move, right? That's just my personal opinion. It almost seems like they realize they're not going to win anyways with him. This late to come to that conclusion is wild. I mean, hey, it is what it is there, man. But keep letting me know your guys' thoughts on Taylor Jenkins. Going to move on from this. I know it's a breaking news episode, but we're still going to have a full episode. I had another topic coming in here to talk about. So this one comes from The Ringer, I believe, in which that reportedly the Boston Celtics are not willing to pay into the second tax apron a second time. Now, this is an interesting feat because we know that the Boston Celtics were just bought, but their current governor is going to be staying in charge of the team. I believe until 2028. I believe is when the handoff happens, as far as when that transition will happen. But the Boston Celtics are a team that are a championship contender, right? And as we've seen before, that paying into the second tax apron is very detrimental to teams, especially as you're trying to build something going forward. It's so limiting, things like that. And the Boston Celtics right now are only $4 million into the second tax apron. Now, next year, they are scheduled to be $17 million into the second tax apron. So if this is to be believed, right, which I believe this comes from Stein, and the Celtics are going to be trying to make moves to get underneath that second tax apron, that leaves a couple of questions, right? Is it if they don't win a title that they're going to be trying to get out of the second tax apron immediately? Now, they're scheduled to be out of the second tax apron by the summer of 2026. So they would have one more year of paying into the second tax apron. So is it that after that, they want to make sure that they set themselves up to not be in the second tax apron after that? Or is it this immediate thing that we're going to see in the offseason where the Boston Celtics are looking to make some moves to get underneath that second tax apron? Now, the Celtics have a number of contracts that they can look to move to get under that second tax apron, and it would do that alone. If they're able to move Drew Holiday, that'll get them under the second tax apron. If they're able to move Derek White, which I don't expect they would want to do, they're able to get under the second tax apron. Sam Hauser as well, who's scheduled to make $10 million next season, would be close to getting them under the second tax apron. If they're able to move off from him and some other players, they can do that, maybe replenish that with kind of vet minimum players. But this is an interesting thing, and I was preparing a whole video to talk about this because this is the dangers now that we're seeing of the second tax apron era in the NBA, right? Is that if even a team that's a championship contender like the Boston Celtics, if they're looking at the finances and everything, now they went through an ownership change, so that may be one of the reasons here. But if they're looking at things and saying that second tax apron, I don't care that we're a contender, we got to find a way to get under the second tax apron. That to me speaks very loudly over what you can kind of see with this. Like, I know that in place of a hard cap, they put the second tax apron in. I still personally would rather see the NBA go to just a hard salary cap. That's just my personal opinion. But as long as we're in the era of this second tax apron and it's as punitive as what it is to teams, you're going to see more like this. And so we could very well see a championship contender in the Boston Celtics repeat. They could very well repeat this year. I'm not picking them to repeat, but then have to make tough decisions after repeating as two-time champions to get under a second tax apron. That's restrictive, right? And that's the part about as a basketball viewer and as kind of a person that looks at the game outside of just what you see on the court, that's such an interesting dynamic to be in, is that we could see for the first, like a team like the Phoenix Suns, they're struggling to get into the play-in, right? So them getting under the second tax apron, it makes so much sense. This would be the first time that we see under this, but in a short amount of time. The second tax apron hasn't been around for a long time, but if we see a championship caliber team, while they're still in the height of contending for a title, look at this second tax apron and say, we got to get under this. We got to move on. Contending be damned. That would signal so much of what other teams could making tough decisions about that second tax apron, right? Now, this is all rumors. As of right now, we don't know for sure if that's what they're going to be looking at. This comes, it comes from Jake Fisher, not Mark Stein. Let me quote that first. But it would be so crazy to see that, right? Is to see that team in the Boston Celtics have to move off a major piece on their roster because their ownership is not willing to pay the second tax apron. And here's the thing. I'm not knocking an ownership not wanting to pay the second tax apron. There's the penalties of doing that as far as not being able to aggregate salaries, not being able to you lose your mid-level exceptions. You do all those type of things. I can understand that being something that you look at and you say, it's more restrictive to try to keep this together than to keep it together, right? And so that's the place that the Celtics and many other teams may have to ask themselves. The era of the super team is dead. The manufactured super team, and that doesn't apply to the Boston Celtics. Most of the players that are on this team, they either, they drafted well or they traded for and things like that. But like it's just an interesting place that we could see this league being, and the Boston Celtics being a team that has two players in Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. And what does that mean for them, right? If you are those two players and you see your team say, all right, bet, we got to sell off Drew Holiday. We got to sell him off. Maybe that's not the worst thing, right? Maybe it's Kristaps at $30 million next season. But you gotta make a move and not take back as much salary to stay under that second tax apron. That's a very interesting thing to watch as we continue going forward into this new era of the NBA. But I knew at some point Boston couldn't keep paying into the luxury so much. If so, the East could be more wider open than we think in a couple of years. Where's the thing? Paying into the luxury and the second tax apron are different. I think teams like Boston are still going to pay into the luxury tax. But being in that second tax apron, especially being repeat offenders in that second tax apron, that's where things can get a little dangerous for sure. Orlando has important cap decisions to make this offseason next in regards to tax aprons, etc. I don't think Orlando's as close to teams are going to still pay into the luxury, right? That's why it's a difference between the luxury tax and the second tax apron. If I'm not mistaken, yeah, they still have $8 million below the first tax apron and then $58 million below the second tax apron next year. So I don't think the Orlando Magic are in as tough of a spot, but they will have to make some difficult decisions for sure. Orlando also has cap issues this offseason and next in regards to tax aprons too. Them being no, they don't. Like I said, next year they're $8 million below the second tax apron. The year after that, they're $58 million below the second tax apron. So it's not really as big as what you're alluding to there. The day of the dynasty might be behind us. I don't think that's good for the NBA. Adam Silver is not good, and now we're looking at Europe. He needs to go. That's a crazy one there, JDH. But hey, I'm sure there are some people that agree with you, and we'll see how that ends up working out for these teams. But that's why that's why I think you're going to see teams be very, very protective over their draft picks in the coming years. Like the days where we see teams make a bunch of moves, like just treat draft picks willy-nilly, I think that's about to be dead, because you're going to need those draft picks to develop to really be in there, right? So second tax apron makes sense on why Bulls so low on trades. No, the Bulls were never close to being in the second. We don't even spend into the luxury tax. We're definitely not anywhere close to the second tax apron. So that's not really that for the Chicago Bulls. Mo and Paolo max. Yeah, Mo and Paolo's max, but keep in mind, Paolo is not a restricted free agent until 2026, 27, where they have $136 million beneath the second tax apron, right? So they got that. Mo, I don't know if Mo's going to get the max, right? So we'll see. Like, they could be in an interesting situation, but they still got some time on that. Paolo and Mo they're not to after the 2026-27 season. That's when the Magic are slated to have a bunch of cap space. But, we'll see. We'll see. But all right, guys, thank you so much for tuning in, man. That's crazy that we just saw a coach fired that has a 55% win percentage. Currently, it has a 60% win percentage for a playoff team right before the playoffs. And then we could see, as soon as this offseason, the Boston Celtics make moves to get themselves beneath the second tax apron while actively being a championship contending team. That is what we could see here. That is the era of basketball that we currently live in. And things are getting interesting, people. Things are getting very, very interesting around the NBA. You're going to have to see franchises be smart. They're going to have to be smart in the moves that they make. And if they're not, it's going to be so detrimental, man. I think our GM's having an ego trip or something here in Memphis. Jenkins done nothing but good for us, I feel like. How do you feel about his personality and passion affects the team? Listen, I from the outside looking in, right? I'm not going to act like I'm not a huge Memphis Grizzlies fan. I do watch a lot of Memphis Grizzlies basketball, but I'm not like entrenched in what is happening on the back end of that franchise. But I don't see anything in where Taylor Jenkins was the problem there. Like, there's just nothing that I see where Taylor Jenkins is the problem. I don't see. I just don't see that Taylor was the problem there. So it either had to be something like you said, where the GM is on an ego trip, which we have seen before. Hell, we just saw Nico Harrison trade Luka Doncic, right? It could be that, or it could be that maybe there's some things going on in the locker room that we don't quite know about. That the front office was kind of unsettled about. So, we'll see. We'll continue to monitor it here with the number one spot for everything basketball related. When news drops, we drop. Thank you guys for tuning in. Hit that subscribe button as well. I appreciate you guys so much, man. You can follow us at NBA Central Pod. You send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, NBA Central Show at gmail.com. And then lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, 773-270-2799. We're the number one spot for everything basketball related. And I'll see you guys the next time I feel like making a video, probably tomorrow.